And that leads me to our very special guest who joins us live ahead of a big day on the track for you and on the back of a big track for Australia night last night. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Troy. How are you?
I'm really well. I'm absolutely honoured and privileged to be able to speak to you today. How do we find you today?
Oh, look, I'm very excited because today we get to see the Mount Fuji Speedway for the first time in real life. I have been riding this speedway for about 18 months. Yeah, probably 18 months virtually.
Wow.
We've been, I think, the only country in the world who's actually had the footage of the track put onto a virtual platform with using a smart trainer, being able to go up and down the hills. So I have ridden it hundreds of times, but now I actually get to ride it in real life, and I'm so excited.
That's so strange. So you've been training with a virtual track at home in Melbourne, and that's your training to get as much as you can train to get a feel of the track.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially when the games got postponed last year and we got sent into lockdown, especially the really long one. That was my godsend, and I actually kept my whole schedule on track last year as if I was going to be racing in September. And we actually, on the day that I was supposed to be racing, which back then would have been September 1st, I believe.
Yeah, right.
We actually raced it. So we had my whole day planned out like I would normally have done, and we did the race. So,
right.
You know, and then 2 days later, I jumped on a different virtual platform, Zwift, and did a road race. So we kept my schedule completely the same, just so that I had something to focus on.
Is that something that you've ever used before? Like doing things virtually? Is it a part of your training? Does it help to have a little bit, or you just like scrap that? I'm going there a month or two early and you've done the tracks before probably, or?
No, we've never raced on this track.
Wow.
It wasn't really a big thing before COVID hit,
right,
and lockdown, and now they have esport racing now. You know, they had the first World Championships last year, virtually, which was amazing. We actually had young Sarah Giganti, who was at the Olympics for us. She came second in the virtual Zwift racing last year for the World Championships. So a lot of people don't know about that. But before that, I can go back to 2012 and my first games. And we had actually we raced then on Brands Hatch, which was another car race circuit, about an hour outside of London. And I guess it was the June before the Paralympics, we had been at a World Cup and we were allowed to go have a ride on the circuit. So we'd done a ride, and one of our sports scientists actually filmed it and got all the gradients and put it on it was so new. It was called a Velotron, and it wasn't the real footage, but it was, almost like, as I'll be Japanese, anime. It was just, they drew stuff in, but we rode the gradients, and it was very interesting because it was really hard on the Velotron. But then when we got back to Brands Hatch for the race, it seemed so easy. So I'm really hoping it's the same here today, and I'll find out today, obviously.
I can, for people that haven't paid any attention to my promoing of you over the last 2 days, you've got a bit of a mixed accent going on, which means you've lived somewhere else for some time. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I was born in Toronto, Canada, and I moved to Australia. Well, it's got to be lucky. August 31st, 1994 is the day I arrived here, or in Australia. I'm here in Japan now, but arrived in Australia. And it's 27 years to the day is when I raced my time trial here.
No way.
So
I love it.
That's got to be a good omen.
Yeah, wow. What led you to move to Australia?
Oh, a man.
Chasing love.
Chasing love. No, I had taken a year off work in 1992, and I went down to Australia in 92 and spent a year traveling around. I was a bit burnt out from work and wanting to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I guess it was about 4 months before I was going home. So I'd almost done my year, and I met my husband, Russ. And I had to go home because I had to go back to work. I had no more money. And we traveled back and forth for about 7 months, 8 months, until he finally proposed. And yeah, in August 94, I came down.
I love a good snap up. You must have seen a good thing.
And we're still together, which is even better.
Yeah. We celebrate that these days. Like,
oh, we do.
Like, wow,
I mean, we had our 26th wedding anniversary this year. So yeah, it's hard to believe. Like, it's been that long.
Yeah. Had you gotten into professional sports by that time?
Oh, God, no. I mean, I was an elite swimmer as a kid growing up in Canada, and my goal was always the 1980 Olympics. Canada boycotted those games, and whether I would have got on the team, who knows? But
you were in the mix.
Well, I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I just figured that was it. There was no more chasing that dream, and I was still swimming as a master swimmer. And that's how I met people. That's how I made friends, was through the local master swim club. And it was, during my swimming career with them, we were down in Hobart at the Masters Nationals. And my first symptoms of MS hit me full on. I didn't know at the time what it was, but I felt like I had the flu, and I swam terrible. It was like, you might as well pick a rock off the bottom of the pool.
No.
But it was about 40 degrees in Hobart that week, which was highly unusual, and there was no air conditioning. So, everything hit at once. And I can go back now and think of things, little symptoms that hit me growing up, in my early 20s, even in late teens, early 20s. But, when they're one or two things and they go away, you don't think about them. You think that it's something else. But when they hit you all at once, it's another thing. So
we've got a regular segment on here which has been moved so we can fit you in. It's Daily Dollop of Daz, and it's from a very good friend of mine who runs the segment, and he's got MS. He got diagnosed about 7 years ago. I knew him beforehand. In particular, he talks about how hard the heat is with MS, something that is quite common with people with MS, like they battle that. How are you finding Tokyo?
Oh, look, we've done a lot of work in probably the last 2 years of heat acclimatization and working out pre-cooling strategies and post-cooling strategies from racing. So I can't tell you the amount of time I've spent riding in a heat chamber.
Right.
The Victorian Institute of Sport has a heat chamber, so I did a lot in the heat chamber in 2019, leading into 20. And then I relocated in June up to Queensland just because of all the lockdowns and making sure we could actually train together as a team and then get out of Australia for Japan. And so the Queensland Academy of Sport had a heat chamber as well. So we've done heat chamber, we've done saunas, and it's funny, the other day we were riding here. As cyclists, we're very lucky. We're not in the village. We're 2 hours south of Tokyo.
Right.
Right now we're in a little place called Izu near the velodrome, and there's one road we can ride on that the police have given us, permits to ride on. And of course it starts 7K downhill and then finishes uphill. And then you come back on that road and you got to finish 7K uphill.
Yeah, right.
And the other day when I looked at my cycle computer afterwards, the top temperature was 40 and the humidity was 90%.
Wow.
And it was the first time ever that riding out on a road, I could actually see water dripping down my arms, like the sweat. I've done that in the heat chamber, but not out on the road. But when we finished, I was really surprised when I looked at what that temperature was and the humidity, because I didn't feel too bad. Yeah, it was hot, but I'd done some pre-cooling beforehand. I drank a lot of slushies, funny enough, they use powdered Gatorade in them. So It gives us that bit of boost as well. So I drank half a thermos of slushy before I went out, which tricks your mind into thinking your inner core is cool. And then I had more slushy upon finishing with cold towels and stuff around me. And my symptoms, you still get your symptoms still worsen, but they don't get to that point where you can't function. And once my inner core is cooled down, then I'm fine. So it's been an amazing learning experience.
Wow, 2 years though of dedication to preparing for this day.
Well, it's actually been 5 years of dedication.
Well, yeah, sorry, yes. Yeah. Take us back to, can you share a little bit about what happened on, back in 1998, 23rd of April? Not many people remember any other days other than maybe their wedding anniversary and their birthday, but that day is a pretty significant day for you. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, I actually remember the time. My appointment was 2:15, and for a change, a doctor was on time. I was surprised. But I told my husband not to come with me because all my symptoms were gone. I'd been off work, well, since February, and now it's April. And I thought, I'm fine. My GP thought I had an inner ear infection because my balance was off. I was lethargic. But then my eyesight had started to go, and I had some testing done with an ophthalmologist. And unbeknownst to me, she had called my doctor and said, I think she's got MS, but you've got to send her to a neurologist. And so this was the day I was going back to get my MRI results.
Right.
And because all my symptoms were gone, I just assumed that everybody was wrong, that this was just an inner ear infection because I was now fine. So I told my husband to go to work, and I just went on my own. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be wasting this guy's time and my money. And when he opened his door and ushered me in, he was in a real hurry, and he was very, very gruff. And he's like, sit down in that chair. And he pointed to a big armchair. And so I sat down, and he pulled the MRI film out, and he held it to the ceiling light. He didn't even put it on one of those light boxes. He just held it up to the ceiling light. Right. And I thought, man, I am wasting his time. And he just said, too many lesions on your brain for someone your age. And of course, that first word, lesions, I'm thinking, I'm dying. It's just those instant words that you think about. And he said, so you've got multiple sclerosis, and basically your life as you know it's over. I'd suggest you go home and put your affairs in order before you become incapacitated. And then that word incapacitated hit me. And I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. And I literally just sat there looking at him. And that whole appointment, I said one word, and it was at that point. I looked at him and I said, what? And he just went, oh, you heard me, you've got MS. And so this silly sports stuff you do, you're not going to be able to do that again. You're going to have to quit work, and you'll have to go on a bunch of drugs. And to be honest, I've got enough people and patients with MS to deal with, so you'll have to go back to your own GP. He can look after you. And I was still sitting in the chair. I didn't know what to say because that word incapacitated was running through my head. And of course, when you hear a word and you don't know the knowledge behind it, you think the worst case scenario.
Of course.
Completely worst. So of course I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be sitting in a wheelchair wearing nappies, drooling, unable to feed myself, communicate. I went way over the top, because I had no knowledge. And he put the film back into the envelope. He walked to the door, he opened it, and he said, hurry up, I have patients waiting. And I think I sat there for a few seconds, and he was like, come on, hurry up. And I walked towards the door, and he slammed the envelope into my chest. I can tell you what I wanted to do with that envelope at that point in time.
Who is this doctor? This doctor sounds like
He had the audacity to look at me and say, see my secretary for your bill on the way out.
Oh, man. I'm so
and
sorry.
It was an old Victorian terraced house that had been converted into medical suites.
Sure.
And so it had one of these really long hallways, like my house. I have a Victorian terrace, and it was the longest hallway in the world that day because it just never seemed to end. It took me forever. And I remember passing his secretary's door. And as I got to the front door, her office was near the front door. And I went to open the door, and I could hear her yelling, Mrs. Cooke, your bill. And I didn't even answer. I opened the door and, to be honest, stepped out into a whole new world that day, just a whole new world. To this day, I don't remember driving home. I know which way I would have gone. I don't even remember. Our back gate was two huge gates that you had to get out and open physically. to get our car in. And I don't remember parking the car, but it was there and the gates were closed. The next thing I remember is sitting on my couch in tears. And we had a 6-month-old puppy, and she was a lab cross border collie. And she had jumped up on the couch and she put her head in my lap and started to whimper. And it was that snapped me out of my stupor of whatever I was in. And I was more worried about her. And I was like, it's okay, Kimber, things will be fine. I'll figure this out. So yeah, that was my lovely introduction to MS. But Troy, to be honest, I was really angry about him giving it to me that way.
Sure.
But I'm lucky that I have people like my husband and my GP. I give him a shout out, Jeff Wilcox, because, they set me straight. And once I got past that anger, I realized that he'd done me a favor, because when I was a kid, I was really pig-headed and stubborn. And if you told me no, I'd find a way to get around it.
Yeah, sure.
I think that inner child came out eventually. It didn't happen overnight, obviously, but eventually, 6 months later, I was saying, nobody is going to tell me what I can and can't do. And nobody's, not even MS, is going to define who I am. And so him doing it that way probably gave me that little push to say, what are you? I'm doing it my way. So, yeah.
Did everyone else in your corner have that same kind of determination? Because sometimes the people around us can go, hey, Carol, just slow down. You need a rest. Hey, you've got MS. What are you doing? And that would be really hard to go, shush.
Yeah. I hate to say this, but yeah. My mom and my husband, my mom flew from Canada because they all thought I was going to die. We had no information about MS. So, mom flew over and my symptoms were gone, so it was like they wanted to wrap me. I felt like they wanted to wrap me in bubble wrap and put me in a padded room.
Yeah.
And I remember so succinctly one day, my mom was there and I went to get up and do the dishes. And both my husband and my mother were like, come on, sit down, it's okay. And it was morning and I lost the plot. And I actually said the F-bomb to my mom. I told them to F off and I stormed out the door and I just walked down to the local park and I sat there for 2 hours. And I just, took deep breaths and just thought, okay, you know what? They're the ones that are suffering. I'm living with this. And that's the one thing that you'll find a lot of people with MS don't like hearing people say, oh, you suffer from MS.
Yeah.
No, I had to realize that I wasn't suffering. I was dealing with it and I was living with it, but they couldn't do anything to help me. And they were the ones that were suffering. And that was what I had to then get into my head that, so I had to go home and apologize to my mother for telling her to F off. I think she was a bit shocked.
It sounds like you don't speak like that to your mum very often.
Oh God, no. My mom taught me the S word, but not the F word. So it was it was a learning curve, I think, for everyone. And look, MS is so different for every single person, and that's why it's so hard, or it used to be so hard to diagnose, because no two people present alike. Like, it's just so different for everybody and how they deal with it, and they have to find what's right for them. So yeah, it's a tough disease to live with, but you can live with it, and I mean, I'm living proof of that.
What drew you to rowing?
Oh, nothing.
It's
funny because I went to a Paralympic talent search day. I'd actually gone to the World Masters Games in 2005. And for the first time ever, they had para sports in swimming and athletics. And I'd done really well. And Paralympics Australia heard about me and sent me an email. It was Tim Matthews from PA. Sent me an email inviting me to a talent search day. But I don't think he realized I was 45 years old.
What, is it normally younger,
it's usually kids and early 20s. And so I sent him an email back and said, do you have any idea how old I am? And I said, I might be a bit long in the tooth. And he said, oh, no, don't worry about it. Come anyway. And I remember walking into the Victorian Institute of Sport that day, and everybody, all these parents, like younger than me, were there with their kids. And at 45 years old, I walked in, and I'm sure they were thinking, where is her child? And I'm like, hey, I'm here for the testing. I think that day, I was talking to Tim not long ago, actually, just before I came to Japan. And I think I was 25 years older than the oldest person there doing the testing. So me and all the kids went through the testing. But I mean, you know, they were the ones that said to me, oh, rowing's a new sport in 2008. So we think you'd be good at that. We'd like you to take it up. So that was how I got into rowing, you know. And at that point I thought, well, it's water-based, so I should be okay. And to be honest, when I was learning to row on the Yarra River, especially in a single, it was a good thing I knew how to swim, because I fell in a number of times. Let me tell you, the last thing you want to do is fall into the Yarra if you don't know how to swim, because it is not a nice place to swim.
There's something amazing that you're just touching on very lightly, and we don't have enough time to talk about all the times that you've faced a problem, some adversity, and taken it on and flipped it around and turned it into your favour. What do you think are the processes that you've put in place over the years in terms of overcoming adversity? Not all of us know what to do at times, and some of us take a long time, sometimes a whole lifetime with you know, real challenges that we don't address. Seems like you've got this real quick turnaround to be able to face, or is that just kind of more so an outward appearance, what it looks like? But you seem to have a process in place that kicks you, springboards you back into your favour. Tell us a little bit about what happens emotionally, internally. Is it innate?
In my head.
Is it what goes on
in my
for
head?
you to go?
In my head, there's probably like 8 million things going on.
But you eventually get moving.
But I think it goes back to when I was 9, and a lesson I learned from my mum. She's pretty cool, my mum. She's 85 and probably fitter than me right now. And I had tried out for an elite gymnastics club and was turned away at the door because I was too fat. I was told that at 9. And I look back at pictures now and I think, no, I just wasn't the right body type. And I came home in tears and slamming doors and whatnot. And I think my mom was coming in to give me the what for of slamming doors, and saw me in tears. And she asked me what the problem was. And I told her, and she said, look, she said, if you want to do gymnastics, just keep doing it. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not good enough or you can't do that. But if you want to go to the Olympics, because that was my whole thing, I'd watched the Mexico Olympics and wanted to be a gymnast for Canada.
Right.
And if you looked at my body type now, you'd realize I'd never get there. And she said, but if you want to go to the Olympics, just try something different. Try a different sport. And that was my lesson in looking outside the box and never letting people tell you that you can or can't do something. And I think that in the adversity that I've faced, I allow myself to have those real crappy days where I don't want to be happy. But I don't show that to the world. My husband sees it, unfortunately. But I never try and let it get past one day. You know, I allow myself to have my own pity party, or a half a day to be down or really shitty about things. But the next morning I wake up with that attitude of today's going to be a good day. And I always try and find a positive in something. I can go out and have a really crappy training session, or, you know, have issues with my MS. And I think, right, okay, find a positive, just one little positive out of this. And you can always find one tiny little positive out of a negative. You know, there's always something bad's going to happen in life, but find that positive. And you know, it's a learning process on how to do that. And I started at the beginning of, you know, the pandemic. I started writing a gratitude journal and thinking every night before I went to bed about 3 things that I was grateful for that day. At the beginning, it was really, really hard, you know, because everything, the world was going haywire. But it takes time to learn. And I find if you do that, then the next morning you wake up in a better headspace. And I also meditate 10 minutes every day. And it's just listening to an app that I have, my Calm app. I do 10 minutes of listening before I get out of bed, or if I'm having a cup of tea, sit with a cup of tea for 10 minutes. It just kind of put me into that, okay, how are we going to get through this day? And I think the one great strength I have is that I have belief. I have belief in me, and I have belief in my abilities, that if I'm going to give something a go, I'm going to give it the best that I can. And if it doesn't work out, okay, I'll move on to the next thing, you know. But I have that belief. And it's funny, you know, you mentioned our 2 gold medals here yesterday, which was so exciting.
Oh, would have been.
And I tell you, I get teary thinking of it, because I'm the mom on the team. Like I'm the oldest, and I looked at these 2 young women, and they're like my daughters. And it's like, oh my God, we couldn't even be there, you know, because of COVID. We were sitting at the hotel watching and screaming at the TV. But young Paige Greco came back, and I gave her a hug, and we both broke into tears. And I just said, I'm so proud of you. And she goes, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. And I said, Paige, what did we talk about the other day? Because the other day she said, oh, I hope I do well. I said, no, you don't say that. Saying I hope I do well puts a negative spin. There's that little bit of negativeness in there. Say, I'm going to do well, you know, and I'm going to do fantastic. And I said, and have belief in yourself. And, I mean, you know, you're showing it now, and it's just, he was just so incredible. And funny enough, her coach said to me, you're not going to, who's my coach? He said, you're not going to believe we're sitting on the chair waiting for her to go onto the bike. And she says, oh, I don't think I'm going to win this. And he just looked at her and went, what? Because the Chinese girl had broken Paige's world record in the heats. And, you know, and now she's up against her in the final. I mean, Paige had come out in the qualifying and broken that again, but she was thinking the Chinese had held back. And so she said, I just don't. And I said to her, I said, honey, you got belief, and you got to have belief. And I think yesterday has just shown her that that's one thing that really, really works. And so I can't wait to see her and Emily in the next 2 races as well, because I think they now have the belief in themselves, and that's what I've always had. So I think that's my secret weapon, is belief.
You almost couldn't be at the Olympics though, at the Paralympics at the moment. Only 10 months ago, I mean, we've talked about this before meeting you. As I mentioned before, we've got some attachments to people that with MS, and things are ongoing. 10 months ago, you had a pretty serious relapse. What happened? What happened? I mean, it's epic. I've read a little bit about it, but can you explain what happened? And 10 months ago is just incredible that you're there.
It was towards the end of October, and I was starting to get. It felt like tingling in my fingertips, which then spread through my hand and right up my arm, and I couldn't actually touch anything because it was like electric shocks, and it was oversensitivity, and very, very painful. But I think the scariest bit was that I'd be in the middle of a conversation and I'd know what I'd want to say, but I couldn't actually form the words, and I couldn't get them. I couldn't verbalize them. And I had been on to my neurologist and my immunotherapy nurse, and I'm saying, like, we need to, I was supposed to have an MRI in January. I said, we need to move my MRI up. There's something going on. And it took about 8 weeks for them to believe me. And finally got the MRI moved up. And yeah, I had 2 new lesions, first time in 13 years, I might add.
Right.
One on the C2 cervical spine, and one lesion on the brain. So obviously the one on the spine was causing the issues in my arm, and the other one was causing the issues with my speaking. But yeah, I mean, I knew what was happening. I guess once you have gone through, you know, I've had a number of relapses until up until 13 years ago. I was probably in hospital every year, if not once, twice a year, dealing with this until I found the right medication. So I knew what to do. I didn't panic. I just thought, okay, we just take this a day at a time. I know exactly what I need to do right now. I need to get on the steroids to stop this, and which worked. And unfortunately, the disease modifying therapy I'd been on obviously had stopped working, which is a real shame because it was my favorite, with no side effects whatsoever. So it was about finding, okay, what do we switch to? And do we do this now, or do we wait till after the games? Yeah. Because you never know if a medication is going to affect you. But yeah, we've worked that out. And I think, funny enough, my coach has said to me, when we did a trial. We had to do a trial in April to make the team. And when we sat down afterwards to talk about the time trial that I'd done and where I was sitting in regards to the team, Dave, my coach, he just said, he said, to be honest, I thought that was it. Like at Nationals in February, he said, I thought she's not coming back. And he said, and I can't believe what you just did. So, I'd done a gold medal standard. So,
wow.
Other people might not have believed. I still had that belief in me that I could come back. And it was about that step-by-step process. And it's not, I always say to people, it's not about looking at the top of the stairs, that final goal. It's about taking each step along the way and building on that. And so that's what I've done in the last 10 months. So.
Yeah. You talked about just how much things change. The medication, something works and something doesn't work. I'm sure that's been quite something that you've gotten used to accepting, that things aren't forever with MS. There's still no cure, so you're trying different things, and it's different for everyone. Botox, of all things.
Yeah. Oh, it's it got me out of a wheelchair. A lot of symptoms aren't spoken about with MS, but I have a lot of bladder issues. And so every 4 months I have Botox injected into my bladder which stops the issues there. So it's amazing the new things that are coming up and what physicians are trying, and neurologists are trying now. And, I honestly believe that one day there will be a cure. Hopefully it's in my lifetime. I'm at the other end now of that lifetime, but, it will happen. You just look at even with COVID and the introduction of the vaccinations, they've found that that's actually helped with the research into MS. So, who knows what's going to happen in the future. And I just have, again, that belief that, it'll all work out.
Once again, thanks for joining us today ahead of today's day. Is it your day today? You on? No.
I race on the 31st of August. So
okay.
Today we actually just get to go and look at the track today and tomorrow and Sunday. So yeah, I'm excited just to get out there and see it.
Oh, so you are spot on with the turnaround, the date, August 31st.
Yeah.
It's spot on. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really cool. Really cool. It's to me, that's an omen. It's my day.
We talk about how we get inspired, and I'm sure you've heard it so many times how you inspire people. And there's an interesting psychology behind it. We can't ever live your life, or we wouldn't ask to go through what you asked through. No one would request it. But it seems like hearing from you today that you're like, I wouldn't change it at all. We have some athletes before and other people with similar challenges that say, oh, in a heartbeat, I'd love to change it, but I can't. We hear of inspiring, life-changing moments like yours that have catapulted yourselves into becoming ruthless and viciously determined to achieve what people say you can't. I am reading this because I pre-wrote it. It's the unreachable, it's the unbelievable. But without facing the physical and neurological challenges you and others there have faced, how can we find that same inner beast to achieve things in the same manner?
I think find something that you are passionate about. I wouldn't be here racing in Japan if I didn't actually love riding.
Sure.
I love training. I love riding. It's my social outlet. And so I'm passionate about it. I love sport. So, I'm still friends with all my rowing friends. And one day I'll jump back in a boat because I actually loved it. I'm still friends with all my swimming people, and I still have a swim every now and then. So be passionate about what you want to do in life. Making, and I always say this to business people, making all the money in the world is nothing compared to having passion for a job that you love, or something that you love doing, whether it, be art, sport, music, reading, writing, whatever. And try anything.
Yeah.
As we get older, we get fearful to try new things. I think because we think we'll look silly. Try riding a tricycle as a 60-year-old. You want to talk about looking silly? But seriously, It is, it's given me more than I could ever imagine. So if I worried about looking silly, I would never have traveled the world. I wouldn't be at my third games, I wouldn't know all these people. I wouldn't be speaking to you. And I wouldn't have written oh, by the way, I wrote my second book in lockdown.
Congratulations, by the way.
That's out now. The Force Within, all good bookstores. Go in and ask for it. Gotta get that promo in there. So, just do something that you're passionate about and have the belief in it that that's what you're meant to do.
Tell us about the book.
Yeah, it's kind of my autobiography. Wow. To a point, but it talks about my family and the lessons I learned from them through policing in the Toronto Police Force. So my grandfather, my father, my mother, and myself were all police officers. And it's lessons that I took from them growing up and my own career as a police officer. And I use stories to tell that. And how it got me through from being a police officer to becoming a Paralympian. So yeah, I literally wrote that from April last year, finished it on August 25th, the day the games were supposed to start last year, and found a publisher in November. And yeah, August 1st, it was released out into all good bookstores in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK.
Wow. So, keep an eye
hopefully
out.
Getting it in, hopefully going to get it into Canada shortly, because so many Canadians have been asking for it.
Oh, so you'd have family in both countries, I'm sure. You can't see the chat line going off, but there's so many people. Some of the comments I want to read to you. You are making me want to step out and embrace life today. Thanks, Carol. That's from Alex. Ellen Latu, I really needed this message today. Thank you so much. The Fizz, who's a physio, love your calmness and ability to see the solutions for challenges that confront you in sport and life, Carol. We're wishing you all the enjoyment of chasing that medal. We'll all be cheering and crying with excitement with your success. Thanks so much for devoting time to RGR.
Oh, thank you so much for the comments. Those are wonderful. And just so that your listeners know, Channel 7 have done an absolutely spectacular job for the Paralympics. This is the first time ever that we have had the same coverage as the Olympians. And to be honest, we were shocked, but we were told last night that the opening ceremonies outdid viewers for the Olympics for Channel 7, wow. Which is just awesome. And they are going to broadcast every single cycling race that there's an Australian in across the track and the road. So we're so excited that people it's a first, they've never broadcast road stuff.
Wow.
We're so excited that that's going to happen.
It's so good. It's so good. You're spot on. The visibility's there. The marketing's doing exceptionally well in making sure people are ready to talk, ready to watch on Channel 7. Thank you so much for all the comments coming through. I think Carol's reception's just playing up a little bit.
Oh.
Are you there?
I think we're freezing. Yep.
I'll stop your video and start it. Give me a sec.
Okay. Yeah, it's saying the internet connection is unstable. So
that's okay. That's okay. We'll see if we can get it there. We are speaking to Carol Cooke, live from Tokyo. There you are. That's all good. I'll see if I can sneak a few more minutes.
Oh, there we go.
That's okay. Are you there?
I think every probably jumped the internet this morning.
Like the whole village is waking up now. Well, Carol, that might be a little sign to wrap it up. You've given us an extra 10 minutes of your time. Can you hear me?
No worries. Happy to. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you. And big shout out to Georgie, our mutual friend who alerted you to check your messages. I'm just really appreciative of the media team to allow you to talk to us today. And I'm going to put up a link to your website. It's carolcooke.com.au, and look out for the book. Our friend Daz, who I talked about, who has got MS, he is sitting in the chatters today saying you're an incredible ambassador, and we look forward to seeing you and following you. I've been watching more Paralympics more than ever, basically because I have never watched it before. So I'm so glad. I've never watched it. It was carnage yesterday on It's carnage. The rugby and the basketball is just carnage. You talk about being embarrassed. So that's what I wanted to touch on just before you go. It actually, like, you have to have a level of acceptance, because you're spending 30% or 40% for those on the ground, and no one's there to pick you up. You got to pick yourself back up. You're already in a wheelchair. I saw even in the table tennis yesterday, the table tennis player was bouncing the ball and it hit something and it went off. There's no one inside that little pen that they play in to go help them pick up the ball. So she's got to sit there in the most awkward silence and got to go by herself with her wheelchair and find a tennis ball. It was just, I couldn't believe it. And it just...
Wait till you watch the table tennis guys who use their mouths with the paddle in their mouth because they have no arms. Yeah.
Is that coming up?
Keep watching. Yeah, well, one of them played yesterday. There was a photo of them. And the archery, there's a guy from the US who's an archer, and he's a multiple medalist, and he has no arms. He uses his feet sitting in a chair. So feet and mouth. So it's, I'm running actually for the International Paralympic Committee Athletes Commission here during the games. And one of my platform things is that we have to see capabilities before disabilities. Right. Because some of the stuff that these athletes do, I could never even attempt to do, and most able-bodied people wouldn't be able to attempt to do. So, instead of looking at this as the disabilities, look at the capabilities, because they're just amazing.
Oh, it's such a great sentence. I've written down a few things that you've talked about today. It's so good. And I have forgotten to alert. My bike has MS.
Oh, yes.
Darren, who I'm talking about, created that ad.
Oh, fantastic.
He was there in it.
Okay. Yeah, I was part of the design team, looking at how to make the bike with MS.
Yeah, I don't, Daz, I know you're on the chat there. Did you meet Carol? But anyway, we've played that ad on here before. It's a super powerful ad. So Daz created it. He's part of the production team, but also featured in it. He had his little skinny jeans legs and his cane. I've known Daz for a long time. But anyway, Carol, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And
no worries, and thanks for having me, Troy. And I hope you and your listeners have a fantastic day, and keep watching Channel 7 and all across the channels for all the sports, because they are amazing people.
When do you get to pop a bottle of champagne for the medals? Because it's
probably the 3rd or the night of the 2nd when my last race is over. Yeah,
it'll be so hard. You've got 2 Australians that just won medals, our first medals in the. That's the thing, is we have to keep that tempered down. Like, it's great, and for them, it's you get so excited with that first medal that you win, no matter what color it is, and then you've got to temper that to realize that you have to focus on the next. So go check out Carol's website. It's Carol Cooke with an E on the end.com.au. She's got a book out called Finding Your Inner Gold, all at good bookstores. And
no, that's my old book.
Oh,
my new book is called The Force Within.
You got 2 books?
I've got 2 books now. Yeah.
What are you doing? Hang on, quick question. Is this your last Paralympics?
Oh my God! Everybody asks me. Well, Paris is only three years away.
Yeah.
I turned 60 a couple of weeks ago. I'm the oldest female on the team. God, Paris, I'd be 63. Let's just take it a year at a time. I said I never thought I'd be in Rio, because I made my first games at 51, and I was so excited. And I just take things a year at a time, because, MS, the beast that it is, you just never know where you're going to be. And sure. I just keep riding. I don't ride to make the team. I just ride because it's keeping me walking and it's keeping me in life. And yeah, so I never say never. I'll leave it on that.
Thanks so much, Carol. You have a good day. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Troy.
You're the best.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.